Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Franklin Onowugbeda, and the title of my presentation is Reducing Anxiety and Promoting Meaningful Learning of Difficult Biology Concepts. Can CTCA be a fix? So I'd like to acknowledge the presence of my supervisor, a co-author, Professor Peter Okebukola. Other co-authors on the list are Deborah Banimu, Fred Awa, Ibukunlu, Adimola, Olasupomi Gbeleyi, Adekunle Oladejo, Esther Peter, and Adeleke Ide. So we are all from Africa Center of Excellence for Innovative and Transformative STEM Education, Lagos State University in Nigeria. So the problem our study sought to solve was the aversion to science among senior secondary school students on account of the difficulty that they experience. And this is evident to the poor performance in public examination over the years, as can be seen in figure 1 on the screen. So, sorry, I'm having issues with my, okay. So, in figure 1 shows the poor performance of students in biology. And also when we compare African students in international STEM, testing STEM, we see that they are also not doing excellently well. Now, this is a problem that needs to be urgently addressed. So it's important to let you know that there has been several efforts to address this problem, one of which is the utilization of several teaching approaches. Yes, I would say that these methods have improved the learning of biology, but they have failed to sustainably reduce the anxiety level of students and also promote meaningful learning. So we try to review literature, and it came to our knowledge that several science educators and researchers have failed to realize the significant role that culture and context play in student learning. So this is why we're proposing a culturally immersed and contextually situated method of teaching, which is a CTCA, to see if this could be a fruitful way to reduce the anxiety level of students and promote meaningful learning. So what really is CTCA? It's the acronym for cultural, C for cultural, T for techno, C for contextual, and A for approach. So it's a blend of three frameworks, which is the culture, the technology, and the context. So on the screen here, we have the theoretical and philosophical framework of which our study is hinged on. We propose two research questions to address our study. The first one reads, what topics in the biology curriculum do students find difficult to learn? And the second, is there a statistically significant difference in anxiety level and achievement is perceived to be the most difficult to learn when taught using CTCA and their control counterparts? So we proceeded our study with a two-phase inquiry process. The first was a survey, and the object of this phase was to identify the difficult concept in biology, while the second phase, Quasi-experimental, we try to harness the power of CTCA on the most difficult concept identified in the first phase. So moving on to the first phase of our study. So we surveyed 1,493 senior secondary biology school students, which were randomly selected from public and private schools in Lagos, Nigeria, and Accra, Ghana. So we can see the gender difference is partly comparable, and the instrument used in collecting data was the difficult concept in biology questionnaire. Here, the table on my right, we can see our results from the survey phase, which showed variation and evolution as the most difficult biology concept. So we now moved to phase 2 of our study to harness the potency of CTCA on 88 senior secondary biology students. So we had two classes, the experimental class and the control class. In the experimental class, we had 45 biology students, and the control class comprised 43 students. So we had two instruments. variation and evolution achievement test, and variation and evolution anxiety scale. These instruments were validated, and they had respectable reliability values of 0.79 and 0.82. So in both experimental and control classes, they both had their pretest and their treatment. For the experimental class, their treatment was with the use of the CTCA method, and for the control class, it was the conventional lecture method where teacher goes to class and just talk. After that, the two groups both had their post-test. So how did we implement CTCA in the classroom? Now we followed a 5-step procedure. The first step was a pre-lesson assignment on cultural practices and web resources related to the topic aspiration. So we told the student, okay, before the lesson, you go home, you ask your parents, ask your guardians about some cultural practices related to the topic. And you also, surf the internet and look for related knowledge that are associated with the topic. So we're made to, we made the student understand that they were going to present their findings in the actual class. So in step 2, as lesson begins, the group leader came forth to present their findings from the output of step 1. While in step 3 of the process, it's progressive with sprinkles of humor, and practical examples were drawn from the immediate surrounding of the school. And in step 4, students were made to understand about the importance of the cultural practices that they shared. And the teacher also went further to clear any misconception that must have arisen from their cultural practices. Now, in step 5 of our process, a brief summary of the lesson was sent to the students via WhatsApp. And in subsequent lessons, the group leader sent the summary to the students. So here we have the indigenous knowledge used to explain variation. We have albinism. Now, this student gave a misconception that, okay, albinism occurs when you mate under a sunny day. So this is one of the misconceptions that the teacher tried to clear. Also here is cis finger. In Africa, there is believed that a person born with cis finger tends to be rich or tends to be a king. So this is another misconception. And the science behind this is that this is a genetic disorder. So this is what the teacher also tries to clear from the students. And here we have tribal marks. Different tribes in Nigeria, they have different tribal marks for identification. So here's the result of the means from the experimental control group. Yeah, so before the treatment on the measure of achievement and anxiety, we see that they are partly similar. Now, after the treatment was implemented, we see that the experimental group had a higher mean score than the control group. And on the anxiety measure, we see that there is a reduction in the anxiety level of the student as compared to the control group. So we went further to test our hypothesis. But since we had 2 dependent variables, which were achievement and anxiety level, and we couldn't randomly assign subjects to the experimental and control group. So the suitable statistics was the multivariate analysis of covariance, which was applied on the achievement and anxiety data. Now, our preliminary test showed that our data satisfied the assumptions necessary for using these statistics. So our results show that the village trace, which was greater than 0.05, confirmed the significance of CTCA. Now we also went further to test subject effect on achievement and anxiety measures, and we also found similar trends. So in discussing this result, why we achieved this, why the experimental group performed better, we can attribute this to the mechanism of action of CTCA, which comprised culture, technology, and context. For culture, we all know that school science are directly or indirectly related to several cultural practices. Now, when these students were exposed to this, they had a better understanding of the concept, And when they had misconceptions and they were clear, they were more familiar with the concept. Now, looking at the technology framework, we all know that students are tech savvy. So we told the student, okay, surf the net for relevant information about this topic. So they were glad and they were happy. They went on the internet and explored and give out good results. Now, in looking at the context, when we related relevant examples to the students, it also played a significant role in their understanding. So within the limitation of our study, we would want to recommend that CTCA should be adopted as one of the teaching strategy in the toolkit of teachers. And we also say that more training of teachers on how to use CTCA should be employed, and also further testing of the efficacy of CTCA to promote meaningful learning should also be achieved. So these are my references, and thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much for presenting. Do we have any questions from the audience for this presentation?
Maybe not a question, but a comment to thank Franklin for the very lucid way in which he's made a presentation, the problem well defined, and the methodology very clearly stated. We enjoy the findings. Well, there's a question. What's next, Franklin? You know, after you've taken variation, you've taken the first most difficult topic. What's next? Are you going to the next one, or you're going to try out the same method, the same design in other contexts, so to see whether you're getting the same kind of results for variation and for the genetics part of these difficult concepts?
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. So like I said earlier, we have a database for the most difficult concept. So we took on the first one. So we'll progress to taking other difficult concepts and also trying to explore other socio-cultural variables in certain our study, and we're glad to share exciting findings to our NARST community. Thank you very much, sir.
Very good.
I have a question, Adriana, if there is no question from the audience there.
Go ahead.
So, Franklin, thank you so much. I was wondering whether how you think about the connections that the students were making between culture and science, school science and cultural knowledge is at the end of the unit. So I was particularly struck by this idea of the sixth finger and the cultural kind of thinking about this person becoming kind of something special, like a king, right, down the road. So how are we thinking about the meaning making that the students made eventually with a science idea, which obviously doesn't predict that this person is going to become a king, but maybe this person is special, or this person is special because that particular formation doesn't happen very often. So I'm trying to think about how you're thinking of the relationship between scientific knowledge and cultural knowledge at the end of the unit, when the students had an opportunity to think about this. Do these remain separate, or do they find ways to connect them in some ways?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's important to know that yes, there are some cultural practices that are related to science, but we would say that not all cultural practices are related to science, because there are some misconceptions that exist in those cultural practices. So the important feature of our teaching approach is to clear out such misconceptions that may have arisen from such cultural practices. Take, for example, the six fingers. You know, they had this belief that, okay, a person with six fingers tends to be rich or tends to be a king. These are the ideas that they have, you understand? So as a teacher using this approach, we'll try as much as possible to clear out such misunderstanding and make them understand the true science of it. Thank you very much.